keep it real with ya.
Hey everybody, it's me, Meanie, back with another video. It's kind of weird that I'm not centered. Makes me a little uncomfortable, but I wanted you to see my coffin bookshelf that I got because I'm really excited about it. And I got a few horror things up there. I got my Attack on Titan Titans. I got the skulls in the globe. I got Shintaro Kago art book, and I got more Ito Junji artwork. I didn't want you to see it because I thought it was cool. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about why asexual people feel lonely and isolated. I'm not in a lot of asexual groups anymore, but the ones that I am still in, they're very quiet. And whenever I see people post, they're like, it's a lot of doom and gloom. It's like, is there any hope for us to find people that are asexual like us? And, you know, just a lot of people asking the question of like, is it even possible at this point to have a relationship with someone asexual? Should I just have a relationship with an allosexual? Like, what's going on? It seems like a lot of people are quiet and they don't feel like they're very connected to anything. And the largest asexual group that I used to be in, I myself, as well as several other asexual people I know, left those groups a long time ago because we just did not feel welcome. We didn't feel comfortable. It felt like there was a huge influx of people who didn't really seem to be asexual, but kind of wanted to use the label. So I'm going to talk about several of the reasons why people feel so isolated and lonely within the asexual community. So I'll start with what made me think about this. So I did another study. Also, sorry, I am recovering from a cold, so I probably sound, congested and whatnot. So I actually did another study. This one was done by an asexual person of color who was looking into asexual people of color. And they actually interviewed, they interviewed Black people, they interviewed Asian people, they interviewed people who were mixed, some mixed with white, some mixed with other things. And recently they have sent me back the basically the transcript, right, of not just what I said, but what other people have said, kind of like a draft of what the article or the study is going to look like. And I thought it was very interesting hearing what people said when it came to how they felt about the community. There was like 2 people out of everybody who was like, oh, I feel so welcome and loved by the community. I've been embraced and things that was just 2 people. Everybody else was like, nah, the queer community didn't really like me that much, and I don't really know other asexual people. And for asexuality to be touted as like a 1% thing, which I don't know where they got that number from, but even if it was true that it was like 1%, there's billions of people in the world. So that means that there's a lot of people who are asexual, whether they feel comfortable to admit it or if they know and they just don't tell people. It's kind of all over the place. And one of the things that I said about asexuality in the study that made its way into the paper was that I felt like certain races of people tended to latch on very strongly to their identity labels more than others. So I felt that as a Black person, I'm already living intersectionally just by default, Black woman, asexual, like there's so many different facets of my identity that I'm not just asexual. Whereas there are people out there who their identity is solely the fact that they are asexual, and that's it. There really isn't much to them outside of that. And I thought that was very interesting. And then also I thought it was interesting how a lot of asexuals of color in the study said that they felt the need to, they could come out kind of to their friends, but they didn't really tell their family that much because they didn't want to deal with the, having to over explain everything and have these super, super invasive questions regarding like, are you going to have sex? Are you going to have kids? What about your partner? Will anybody love you? Like they just didn't want to deal with those invasive questions. So they just don't really come out to the people around them. And I also spoke about too, on this channel, when I was outed to a group of people who I have been in therapy with. It was a therapy group, and immediately the only other Black person there immediately dismissed or diminished my sexuality and said, you can't be asexual because the asexual person I know is a slut. and sleeps around. And it didn't get to form into an argument, but I was very offended and I never spoke to that person again outside of the therapy group. And it wasn't totally their fault either, though. It was the friend who was claiming to be asexual, but was embodying everything that wasn't asexuality. Which brings me to my first point about why asexual people feel lonely. We do not have a defined definition of what asexuality is. We do not have a singular person who is leading the asexual community or speaking on behalf of the community. We don't have defined definitions. Even within the study itself, the person who was writing it, the definition changed as they moved through the paper. So in some areas, they said that asexuality was a lack of sexual attraction. In other areas, they said it was a lack of sexual desire. In other areas, they said it was a lack of interest in sex. Even then, probably because of the conversations that they had with the asexual people in this study, there was not a clear definition of what asexuality was. They mentioned, I don't even know how you refer to it, but I guess subgenres. Like the sub labels of asexuality, and like the demisexuals and the gray sexuals and the sapiosexuals and all of this stuff. But ultimately, of the asexuals of color that they interviewed for the study, everybody really just identified as asexual, which I thought was positive. I thought that was good, because a lot of these sub labels are way too invasive and talk way too much about what you would do privately, as opposed to just being asexual. So I thought that was good, but there's not a real definition. So if you are someone who feels that you are asexual and you want to connect with someone else who says that they are asexual, y'all are not even starting from the same baseline understanding of what asexuality is. It's like if a gay guy met another guy and the other guy was like, "Oh, I'm gay too." And they were like, "Oh, great, another gay guy, someone I can talk to, someone I can connect to." And then you find out that other guy's married to a woman and they have kids. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm sexually attracted to her and everything." And you're like, "But I thought you were gay." And they're like, "Yeah, I'm gay. But I also like women." See how that becomes confusing? So there's a lot of issues because we don't have a set definition that is like everybody can agree on this definition. You are not going to be able to properly connect with other people who say they are asexual, even in an online space, even especially not in person. Because I've met people who would say, "I'm asexual," but they're really demisexual. And ain't no shame in being demisexual. But as an asexual person, my experience is going to be very different from the experience of someone who is demisexual, who is gray sexual, who has any number of labels that they attach themselves to, because all of those other labels include some form of feeling sexual attraction. And if you don't feel sexual attraction and you've never felt it, you're going to have a really hard time connecting with someone who feels it sometimes or rarely or in a relationship or whatever, you know? And I've also met people who will say, "I'm demisexual," and they don't even have a good definition of what demisexual means. Some people will say, "I'm demisexual because I only have sex within relationships." And then others will say, "I'm demisexual because I only have sex with people I feel comfortable with." And then others will say, "I'm demisexual and I go to sex parties and I have sex with all kinds of people." You know, there's not even a set definition of these sub-labels. So every person you talk to, when you think that you're about to make a connection and you find out that connection is not actually there, you feel even more isolated and lonely and distant from the person you're talking to. Because the whole purpose of labels for the human brain is to be a shortcut. The label is a shortcut. If I say I am autistic, that is a shortcut for your brain to say, "Okay, this person is not neurotypical." What do I know about autistic people? They struggle with social situations. They may not make a lot of eye contact. They may have sensory issues. All of that can be bundled into just saying I'm autistic. versus me saying, I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this issue. Matter of fact, here's an entire file folder from my psychologist for you to read so that you can fully understand who I am. No one's going to want to do that. That's the purpose of labels. That's the purpose of saying you're bisexual, saying you're gay, saying you're aromantic, asexual, ADHD, any of those things. It's meant to be a shortcut. And saying you're asexual without a actual agreed upon definition of what asexuality is, there is no shortcut. You have to say you're asexual, and then you still have to explain everything else, because your asexuality don't mean the same thing to the person that you're talking to. I had the same conversation with someone that I was just meeting and getting to know, and I explained to them that I'm asexual, and they say, well, asexual is a spectrum, so what kind of asexual are you? And I was like, what do you mean, what kind of asexual? Because in my mind, there's only one kind of asexual. There's only, it's literally the small little basic definition of not being sexually attracted to people. And then anything else is outside of that realm. So when you say, what kind of asexual are you? I had no idea what that meant. So I was completely confused as to what this person was asking me. And they were completely confused as to why I was completely confused, because I did not intrinsically automatically understand what they meant when they said, what kind of asexual are you? And so I was trying to ask clarifying questions like, do you mean my attitude towards relationships? Do you mean my attitudes towards sex? Are you asking about my romantic orientation? Like, what are you trying to get at here with me? And they were like, I don't know how I can make it any clearer. What kind of asexual are you? There's a bunch of kind of asexuals. And I was like, a bunch of kind of what, how, why? I don't get it. I don't understand. 20 minutes of neither of us reaching each other. And then me being like, okay, obviously you and I are operating from a very different baseline, and we're not going to reach each other when we're operating from different baselines. So I explained to them that to me, asexuality just means that you don't experience sexual attraction. Full stop. There's nothing else to it. There's no caveats. There's no pivots. There's no asexual parentheses, something. Like, there's nothing else to it. I don't conjugate asexuality to add other meanings to it. It is just that. So I explained that is my baseline. So where is your baseline? And they were like, because there's all kinds of asexuals. And I was like, that's not my baseline. Like, you have to meet me where I am, because I am completely misunderstanding what you're trying to say. I don't even think they fully understood the way they were asking it of me. But eventually they meant like if I was going to be in a relationship or not, which I think that's a fine question to ask. I don't think that whether or not you are into being in romantic relationships changes your asexuality. So I feel like if I say I'm asexual and someone asks, oh, are you also like aromantic, or do you actually want to be in a relationship at some point? That's a fine question to ask. But to be like, which type of asexual are you? I don't fucking know. What part of the internet do you be on? Because that would determine where your baseline is. And that brings me to my next point, which is the echo chambers.